Hello, everybody. We are now live. So welcome everybody to augforums.com/live. As you may have noticed, I'm out with my producer Tim Rodman. He is not here today. He's another engagement, so I'm flying a little solo. So you have to bear with me a little bit in case something goes wrong. So we'll see what happens here. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of a few housekeeping items. I believe I posted on the chat. Please share where you're from. So if you have anything, go ahead and throw it out there of where you guys are located. We always love to see, okay, where are people around the world. So let me go ahead and do some housekeeping here. As always, take a look at augforums.com/sponsors. We love our sponsors. They love clicks. Please take a look. If you want to be included in the Rolodex, augforums.com/Rolodex. It's a great way to see all the people out there who are part of the community, and you can add yourself to that. If you always can search around and find anything out there. Also, augforums.com/podcast. We had mentioned that Tim is out right now. He's actually doing a podcast. So if you like the long format, go to that podcast here. And I apologize for not having a good presentation mode here. So you're actually seeing my PowerPoint here. But now we're gonna get into some Acumatica tips and tricks that will blow your mind. It's hashtag AcumaticaTnT. So if you guys are out there looking at anything in the world, use that hashtag. And it will allow people to see to see any of those tips and tricks. So use that hashtag out there. So now getting our first tip and trick, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to go and show. We're going to go off script here. I'm just going to kind of show some stuff here. So this is one I found out on the Acumatica forums, the community.acumatica.com. And this is how to import made-to-order products. And this is something that Sergey wrote up. It's a great kind of step-by-step, because one of the appealing parts about BigCommerce is the fact that with BigCommerce you can have these like customized things. Like in this case, I think he made a customized spoon, if I recall correctly from his example. Yeah. So he made a spoon he wanted to write on their serial killer. So by default, the connector does not allow you to pull in those specific fields. And so this is kind of walks you through how to do that customization to allow that to happen. So that's a great way to kind of do those custom things. And here's just more of the generic. If you click on that one, it is more of a generic for just the sales order line items. So a great way to kind of see that. So take a look at all of that. And let me go ahead and let me share I'll share that original link into the chat here. So that's that first one. This is another one. So as you deal with e-commerce and multiple sources of data, there are going to be occasions where customers will have multiple accounts. So I encourage everyone who's dealing with that to, this is under the ideas section. There's the ability to merge customers and vendors. So if you are struggling with that, go here and upvote, add your comments, and that'll tell Acumatica that's something that you want to see. I'll go ahead and post that as well out here for everybody. And this is a hashtag AcumaticaTnT that Tim sent out here. So this is how to sort by aggregate values on a generic inquiry. And for those who've been a part of this community before, we also use our other hashtag that we started coining, GI Joes. So it's for those who love generic inquiries. We're using that hashtag GI Joes. So this is something that Tim found that is something interesting, that you can't. It doesn't necessarily make it seem like you can sort based on an aggregate field. But what he found, and he tried to do that in the sort order, and it erred out on him. But he found out if you just put what you're aggregating into the sort, then if you look down below, Acumatica will behind the scenes add the aggregates around it and sort on that. So Acumatica is actually super smart in how it handles that. So pretty cool that it can do that from a generic inquiry standpoint. And our last AcumaticaTnT is something that I threw out there just yesterday. And it's something that if you want to quickly sync an item from BigCommerce to Acumatica or see if there are any errors, add sync status as a side panel. So this is another, we'll go ahead and add another hashtag GI Joe on this one. And I'll show, let me show our stock item screen real quick. This is our live site. And so what we have here, as you can see here, sync status. We do this both with non-stock and stock items. We have just sync status as a side panel, and then and that allows it to kind of look at this and we say, okay, if there's any errors, we can see that. If for whatever reason it's out of sync for who knows what could have caused that, I can just hit the little sync button and it'll push it instantly to Acumatica or instantly to BigCommerce. So kind of a great tool to kind of see that using what's already in Acumatica. So a nice tip, and we've actually shared that in the past. And something that actually I just received an email about today is BigCommerce University. So I'll post that out there. And so this is their certification. So if you're looking to get into BigCommerce in some way, go ahead and check that out. I'm not sure if they had that before, but I just got an email and made it sound like they're launching that. So I wanted to share that with everybody. So those are our hashtag AcumaticaTnTs for the day. Those are tips and tricks that'll blow your mind. So I'm going to go ahead and come back out here with our panelists. And so today we're talking. You can imagine through the tips and tricks we've been talking about. We are talking about the BigCommerce and Acumatica connector. So joining me today, I have Josh Fischer. He is the product manager over the Commerce Edition. Joining us from Acumatica. Welcome, Josh.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And I also have Luke Sepe. How do you pronounce your last? Was I correct?
Yes.
Was I close? Okay. And he is from Cherry Lake. He's another customer using the connector, and they are right in the middle of their implementation. So we wanted to get you multiple perspectives here. So if you don't know me, I'm Ryan Brown. I'm with Expite Technologies. We've been using the BigCommerce connector since the beta phases, so we're pretty familiar with it. Have had a lot of conversations with Josh. We're close buddies now, but yeah. So you get the experience of someone who's been around the block a little bit, and someone who's just kind of starting off their journey, and of course Acumatica here. So before we get into kind of the journey, I wanted Josh to give us a little bit of information about the differences in the Commerce Edition, because I'm on 20 R1, and for us it's a customization package, but that's not the case anymore, is it, Josh?
No, it's not the case anymore. So I can give you a little bit of the history. As Ryan mentioned, 20 R1, which was released about a year ago, that solution was offered as a customization package, which can be added to 20 R1, and it only includes the BigCommerce connector. We had a beta before that Ryan mentioned. The beta was essentially a managed release beta. We had a handful of customers like Expite that were familiar with BigCommerce, very familiar with Acumatica, and they started using the solution early, but then they upgraded to 20 R1 as soon as it was available. And then in 20 R2, which was released in September of last year, we made a few improvements to the BigCommerce connector, and we also released a Shopify connector as well. So everything that you see with the BigCommerce connector, everything we talk about today, it's relatively possible also with Shopify. Now, Shopify is a different system than BigCommerce. There's differences in the API and whatnot, but we achieved a very similar native integration with Shopify as well. And then just a few months ago, we released 21R1, and 21R1 was really our opportunity to start adding in new features and new functionality inside the Commerce Connector. For instance, in 21R1, we introduced support for returns and refunds for BigCommerce. We also added features for B2B or B2C merchants, but any merchant that takes orders offline, we've offered them the ability to have those orders exposed to the My Account area of BigCommerce as well, and that's all in the core. Now, we had customers like XBite that have been customizing the solution and building out their own customization packages and learning how to configure the system at a lot of depth. So they were able to accomplish some of these things with 20R1 and 20R2. But as we learned what customers were doing and needing with the system, we're trying to fit those things into the core as we continue to move forward. I think a big part of what we'll talk about today is the entities window inside of inside the BigCommerce connector. And with the upcoming release in this September, which will be 21R2, we're adding in even more functionality to use custom fields and meta fields inside of BigCommerce and Acumatica and translate that information more with buttons and levers instead of having to write some of the custom code that Ryan was talking about earlier today.
So is that gonna be for sales orders? So sales order custom field?
Can be.
Okay.
Yeah. So actually, the article that you showed that Sergey wrote a few months ago about the made-to-order items, we're actually adding core functionality in 21R2 that will allow merchants inside BigCommerce to set up those modifiers or options. And then when the sales order comes in, for instance, his spoon with the engraved writing, the customer will be able to communicate that during the sales order process. And then that information will be passed into custom fields that you create inside of the sales order line item details. So there's still going to be some configuration that has to happen, but the fact of the code itself, the customization package itself, that'll all be moved into the core. So it'll just be that no-code solution in the entities window, like I said, buttons and levers.
Very nice. Yeah, that's something that I've heard from people as far as a request.
Yeah.
Before we kind of get into our experiences, another question for you, and this is something that came up on the Acumatica community, and actually, interesting enough, when I was talking to Luke about his experiences, something that came up as well is multiple locations or multiple warehouses. Right now, there's not really a solution for that. What's coming up? What's coming up for that?
Okay, so in 21R1 that just came out back in March, we released a feature called multi-location inventory for the Shopify connector. And what that means is inside the ERP, you can have multiple warehouses, and then inside Shopify, you can have multiple locations. And you can map those warehouses into ERP to those locations inside of Shopify. So let's say you have a product, let's say SKU 123, you have 10 of them in one warehouse and you have 20 in another warehouse. You can actually communicate that on the website using this feature. A lot of our customers, a lot of our prospects saw that we did that for Shopify and asked, when is that going to be available for BigCommerce? BigCommerce at this time doesn't offer that same functionality for the multiple location inventory, but they're working on something. So they have a solution right now that's in beta. There's multiple phases of this solution. The first phase, which is in beta now, it's focused around buy online, pick up in store, the BOPIS strategy. So they're communicating the inventory at different locations so that someone can place an order online and then choose a location where they want to go pick up the item. In subsequent phases, they're going to add more B2B functionality as well to match what you see in Shopify today. Now, in talking with BigCommerce, they have an app partner called Random. They introduced us to Random. Random offers a lot of these solutions as extensions to BigCommerce. And in having conversations with them, it seems reasonable that Random's API could be used to connect our information to the Random application and then display location-based inventory on BigCommerce today. A little bit more investigation needs to be done on that, but if a customer were to need the solution today, which we have a few, up to this point, we've been introducing them to BigCommerce and Random to talk about this solution they have.
Okay, and as you know of, no partners have gone on their own to write any integrations with Random?
We have one, no, to answer your question, no partners have at this point written or released any integrations to Random, but there's a customer that's intending to go live this summer, and I imagine they're going to need some of that functionality. I don't know if the integration being built by that partner will be released to the community or not, but it will be, number one, it'll prove the success of having that integration, and hopefully there will be some information that we can glean from it.
I mean, if I know partners, they'll have no problem selling that integration to to others who want to pay for that customization package.
Yeah.
So the summertime. So any of you guys who are going out there to attend Summit, go find Josh at Summit and ask him, hey, is that customer live yet with multiple locations?
Yeah, track me down.
Can we see it? Yeah, find Josh at Summit. So, Luke, this is something that interesting is that kind of hits on a couple things that you and I have talked about. Is that for you guys, that something that we're not doing is allowing people to edit orders. And so, why don't you kind of talk to the audience about what you found around allowing people to edit orders within BigCommerce and how that actually communicates with Acumatica?
Sure. So a little bit of background here. We're traditionally a wholesale company, so we deal in very large orders, full truckloads of material, and our process here is to actually build a more customer-directed outlet for our production. So it's still very much a work in process. It's we don't really have a business model yet, but it's very much something that we're working on and we're behind. And obviously having a web platform to have that interface with the customer is very important. We had looked at this a few years ago, and I'm happy to say that our experience overall with this has been very positive compared to what it was 3 years ago. If you wanted to do something like this with Acumatica, it was basically almost build your own solution, use some kind of a Kenzium connector, build a Kenzium connector with Magento or some other platform. This is much more streamlined, much more straightforward, makes a lot more sense. There's a lot less capital investment. So from that end, we're very happy. But to get more to your point, your question about having this ability to adjust orders, that's pretty important for us because we're actually taking the material directly to the customer, and they're taking receipt directly from us, either in person or off of a truck. So it's a little bit different probably than what Exploit is typically doing. They're putting stuff in a box, it's going to a carrier, UPS, whatever, and they're shipping it off. The customer relationship isn't right there, it's not immediate. So what we foresee is that people will come to our outlet and they might want to change the order on site. So we've done quite a bit of thinking about how we might do that. And what we kind of came to the consensus of is that we can negatively adjust orders. We can put holds through authorize.net on their card for that material until they pick it up. And we're able to negatively adjust that. If they say, we only want 5, we ordered 10, we say, fine, we'll go into your order and we'll adjust that down. Obviously, a different order would just be, a different order. If they wanted to increase their materials, if they wanted to buy more items, they just create another order. If they're going to manipulate that order, that's going to negatively adjust the amount, we can do that. And when we go to actually post the payment, that process is pretty straightforward. I mean, the order in Acumatica gets updated, and then the payment through authorize.net gets adjusted. We just can't increase the amount that we're going to charge the customer. Obviously, that kind of makes sense.
Now, have you guys tested where someone can actually log into BigCommerce and make a change and have that reflect in Acumatica?
So that's, I think Josh had touched on that a little bit. That's a feature that's going to be coming out in a version that we're not currently on, future version. So in 2020 R1, that's not a feature. The way that it works in BigCommerce is you would create a customer's request to return the item that they had purchased. After you approve that purchase, then it would flow through to Acumatica, but that's not currently something that we're going to be doing in our version because it's not a feature yet.
Which version are you on?
2020 R1.
Okay. Okay, same with us then.
Yeah, you would see improvements with that in 2020 R2. So editing orders inside of BigCommerce, those order edits would flow in. But I do understand your challenge. If somebody increases the quantity of items and then they owe you more money, you're going to go through that whole authorization process again. Sometimes it's better to just create that second order to add those items in. But yeah, once you upgrade to 2020 R2, you'll see a few improvements. But to your point, in 21 R1, that's when you see that full integration with the returns and refunds, which really means you can edit information on both sides of the fence, and you can expect to see the edits come through the connector. Now, the one thing to keep in mind is the orders can have, I think, 7 different statuses. So we laid out a workflow diagram to analyze when an order happens, clear through when the order is delivered to the customer. And there can be many different states that order's in. And depending on what state it's in, like a partial shipment, an order comes into the ERP, half of the items get shipped off to the customer and the other half are still on back order. That puts the order in a state that it can't be manipulated by BigCommerce. So there's a bit to think through with everyone that's listening. There's a bit to think through with your particular workflows, but we've added in as many tools as possible to give you that flexibility.
Now, Luke, you're first starting off here. Have you run into any problems with the BigCommerce requirement for unique descriptions?
Yes, that was one of the very first things that we noticed. That's actually feeling like digging back and wiping some cobwebs off. That was one of the very, very first impressions I got with the connector. Was I was surprised to see that descriptions were unique identifiers, and by default they kind of become the page ID or part of the URL.
Yes. So for anyone listening, not that this is a deal killer or anything, just make sure you do realize that the product description is the unique identifier in BigCommerce. And so, Luke, sorry, I just want to make sure everyone realizes that, because that was something that I didn't know getting into it, and we had to kind of halfway probably 6 to 12 months into it, figure out a good solution on the fly as we were going through things. But Luke, all of you kind of talk about what your experience was with that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't, as you say, any kind of a deal breaker. It was just kind of it's an interesting thing. It was like, okay, well, we have to make our descriptions unique. They weren't unique by default. In the way that we were using Acumatica, we kind of have very similar items that have, as probably everyone does, that have minor differences between them. So in our case, the size of the item was not part of the description. So our workaround was just simply add the size to the description. It wasn't a big deal. But yes, it did come as a bit of a surprise, because as you say, the size was contemplated in the SKU or the inventory ID, just not the description. So when that first happened, we started getting the error message, well, this item already exists. It was that realization that it's looking at the description, and that is what it's looking at as the item ID rather than the SKU or the inventory ID from Acumatica. So minor adjustment there.
And just to be clear, I don't mean to interrupt you, Ryan, but just so everyone understands too, when Ryan and Luke talk about the item description, they're talking about the title. and the title of the product itself. And from the BigCommerce perspective, we talked with them about this. They use, you're absolutely right, they use that product title as a unique identifier when you're passing information back and forth. That's important because the SKU itself inside BigCommerce, the SKU is not a required field, and it's just an open description field. So whenever we're passing an item from, let's say, Acumatica to BigCommerce, or an order is coming in from BigCommerce into Acumatica, the product title is one of the required fields that gets passed back and forth. The SKU is also required, but not everybody in BigCommerce is using that SKU field. So their perspective too is from a search engine optimization perspective, you want to have unique titles for all the different products. But yeah, sorry to hear that created a complication, but it sounds like you overcame it.
Yeah, for us, we had 50,000. We have 50,000 plus items and growing, and for a lot of times we're selling hard drives. So it's one of the things that we sell, and the hard drive, we may have multiple models and they all have the exact same description. Yeah. And some of our customers they want this model number, or this part number, and at that point we didn't have that in the description field. So we had played around with putting that in the description field, but it didn't work for some other things that we wanted to do. That's definitely a way to work around it, is to figure out a way to nicely put that into the description. And let me go ahead and show my screen here. And Josh mentioned the entity screen. So for us, we ended up doing because we didn't want to show it all the time, because we have some items that it doesn't make sense to put it in the description field. So we just have this come across here. We concatenate our inventory code with this stock item description, and I say description, and as Josh pointed out, in BigCommerce, that is the product title. So or product name. So that's how we get around it. And then what we've done, and I'll show our stencil edit of this, is that in BigCommerce, we use their handlebars to take that out when we display an item. So we just use a split command in their handlebars to split that product title into an array by the pound sign, and then you pick the last item in that array, which would be the title piece of it, to display as the title. It's just that simple. And so that and we put that in several places, and that allowed us to create a unique product title or description without impacting what we actually wanted to have as that description. So that was a kind of a nice way of doing things. We also, for those looking out there, and let me see if I have this. We use one of the apps that we use is called Search and Eyes for search. Great search. I don't mean just to plug them out there, but Search and Eyes is a great search tool for BigCommerce, and their support is amazing. We told them what we were trying to do, and they had one of their developers write up this code for us. So similar to the experience of, I'm sure Josh got asked, hey, how do we bring over some of these item unique fields to Acumatica? And their developer, Sergey, wrote up something and shared it with everybody. Their developer just wrote this up for us, say, here you go. And it's funny, I even asked them, like, hey, it's okay if you send me, like, if it takes an hour, send me a bill for this time. I get it. Because we had several iterations of things, and they just kept sending us code. So amazing company, not just because they do stuff for free, but very responsive in their support, and great searching capabilities. One of the I was talking to Luke and Josh ahead of time. Let me bring back this mode here. We were talking about, okay, we kind of want to make this kind of like a reference call type thing, so people can kind of turn to this and say, hey, if you have questions, look at this live broadcast, and we kind of talk through some of the good and some of the bad of things. We were on a competing platform to BigCommerce before. I don't want to. There's good and bad with all these platforms, and the grass is never truly greener 100% for everything across any platform. But I felt, and our team felt, that we had to become developers to address anything in this other platform out there. And anytime there was an error or something, or something would go wrong, we found stuff would go wrong every few months. We'd talk to their support, or they'd email us and they'd say, "Oh, go into this thing and run these like scripts," and none of us knew any of that, and so we had to rely on a third party to do anything for us. And I can tell you, on BigCommerce, we've been there for, I don't even know, it may have only been a year and a half now. I think it was January of last year we went live on BigCommerce, and there's been none of that. I mean, it doesn't really break. That's not self-induced, but then B, it just works. And we had issues with indexing in the old platform, where if things weren't properly indexed, they wouldn't show up, and we had to run 3 or 4 different steps to get an item to show up if we made a change. And so with BigCommerce, we said, okay, let's see if this is really true. So we took a Sandbox, we loaded some items in there, just imported it in, just using their tool in the very beginning, and everything showed up. And our jaws dropped. Like, is it really that easy? And then we made a change, and it just showed up, and that was awesome. And so definitely some pretty cool, good things with what we found for that connector. And then with our experience with Acumatica, when you turn on the real-time syncing, you make a change in an item, and within a minute, it's up live on the website. I've seen Josh do some demos and showing some of those features, but it's real. I mean, we do it all the time, and you just make a change, and it's there. So that's really cool to kind of have that. It just kind of works. And from the beginning with the connector, for us, it did just work. There wasn't a lot to configure. We configured some stuff. There were the gotchas, like the description, or the title. Another gotcha for the audience. So in this I don't have a good workaround for, other than just redoing stuff. The category depth in BigCommerce is limited to 8. So you may think, oh, 8 tiers deep, that's really deep for a category structure. But you'll be surprised. We actually had one of our groupings that went to 9 levels deep. And so we had to change around our structure a little bit, because if you go beyond that, it'll error out, and because it can't sync the category, which is a required field in BigCommerce, it therefore can't sync your item either. And so that's something that we had to look at as we went live. And it's just some of those things that you don't think about. Another thing is to realize is that your category titles, and Luke, I don't know if you guys have come across this yet. Do you know the maximum number of characters for a category title?
I do not.
It is 50 characters.
Okay.
So we had to add in some code to make sure that we didn't go beyond that. So basically, we just truncate after the 50 characters, and we'll worry about correcting them at some point on our own. But we had some that were above 50 characters for a category description, and that was something that as we got into it, is we and I should have brought it to this, but there's a document that BigCommerce provides with their maximums, and so look for that if you haven't already seen it. Maybe we can find it and send it out to the community here. But that's a good one out there, and I'm going to throw this question out there to Josh, and because we're not into this, and this is for anyone in the audience, if you have questions, definitely post them in there, and as we go through the chat, we'll interact with everybody. But are any of you using Avalara with BC plus Acumatica? And I know we're not. Luke, are you guys using Avalara for tax?
No, we have a pretty simple tax structure, fortunately.
Josh, how is the community or the other customers and their works with tax and Avalara?
Yeah, we do have a lot of customers that are B2C oriented that are using Avalara, BigCommerce, and Acumatica together. For the most part, everyone, when you're going through the implementation process, there's a few speed bumps that people hit whenever they're setting up the tax configurations. But for the most part, the Avalara integration and using Avalara with the commerce solution is, I mean, it's robust enough that it's not a topic that I'm hearing about regularly. I feel very comfortable pointing people in the direction of Avalara when they're implementing. The integration that we have with Acumatica is very strong. Avalara and BigCommerce have a very strong partnership as well. So I know that Avalara, there are some, I mean, they're continuing to be innovative. They're thinking about other bigger things even in the future, which will be integrated into these solutions as well. So there's nothing specific that I would say to watch out for. The one thing that I would say is, as you're going through the implementation, if you're using Avalara, make sure that you're testing the solution in a sandbox to make sure everything's synced up properly before you go live. I have seen a couple customers just assume that it would be turned on and everything would be perfect before the go live, and that ends up not being the case. But there's no one major challenge that I would say to look out for.
All right, and I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen for a second here, guys. Josh mentioned this, and I'll point out one of the tools that we use for sandboxes. So for us, we had 50,000 items. We use a lot of product configurations for our servers. And we were running. We tried a couple different backup or copy programs, and they failed. We found a company called Rewind Copy, and it will you pay, I think it's like $60 every time you want to make a copy to your sandbox, and so we do this just period once a quarter. We then pull everything into our sandbox just to kind of keep it somewhat in sync. So there's no monthly at all, which is really nice. It's just whenever you want to make a copy. So if you want to make just one, just do it, and then you only do it once, and everything's copied over. And so that's a kind of a good way to. Cause a lot of times you're not syncing your sandbox as well. And so for us, we just sync with our main store, and then we hit the little button, and it copies everything to this other store. So it's pretty nice as far as that goes. Rewind Backup is another one from Rewind that I'll mention to you guys. We use some outside tools that we build ourselves for our product configurators, and sometimes that gets bad. It's software. Sometimes there's bugs and stuff, and so we've had that write bad data to our inventory before, and with just a couple clicks on Rewind Backup, we're able to restore it to any point. So I can say, hey, restore all my inventory to 5 a.m. this morning, and everything's all back to normal at 5 a.m. And then we can fix whatever problem we had, and we're good to go. So both these products from Rewind are great. So I would recommend those to anyone out there listening. There's another question here, and I'll throw this one out here. I'll flip back to our panel here. Oh, I haven't seen this view. Let's not do this one. We want to put various bits of customer-specific data on BigCommerce website when a customer logs into the website. Do we get that data from Acumatica or BigCommerce?
Depends. When they say customer, Doug, when you say customer-specific data, is this data that's in Acumatica already, and is it information that you're collecting about the customer, or is it information that the customer is giving you? And I guess what I can do is I can provide an answer for both of those. So if inside the BigCommerce platform, they have a new concept called meta fields, and those oh good, Doug said yes. Inside BigCommerce, you can add meta fields to products, sales orders, and customer records. So you go inside of a customer record. A meta field is essentially a custom field where you can collect information. That is a feature that was just added to BigCommerce a couple months ago, I think in November of last year. So you can, today, if you wanted to get those meta fields out of BigCommerce into Acumatica, it would require customization, much like what Ryan was showing earlier with the write-up that Sergey talked about. However, with the next release, meta fields will become part of the entities window. So meta fields are completely custom though, so we have no idea what's coming from BigCommerce. So you'll be required to make a user-defined field inside of Acumatica and then use the entities window to map those fields together. But you won't have to write the code. Now, the opposite scenario where you have custom fields inside of Acumatica and you want to pass those back into BigCommerce, that's going to take a little bit of effort as well. But I would follow that same path. I would configure those custom fields or meta fields inside of BigCommerce, set up the user-defined fields inside of Acumatica, and then attempt to use that entities window in the future with the new version, or write a custom integration or custom code to get that data to flow back and forth. Now, there are some customers that we've seen that are working with digital agencies. And those customers, they have a ton of data in the ERP that they want to represent inside of BigCommerce. And what I've seen them do, the digital agencies, is they actually build their own private app in BigCommerce. And that private app is essentially pulling data through the API from Acumatica. It's dumping it into their private app. And then once it's in the private app, they can use that information to display it however they want on BigCommerce. They obviously would have to make some updates on the theming layer to display that information. That's a relatively advanced project. So you want to work with a digital agency, likely, to be able to do something like that. But I know it's possible. We've seen other customers do that.
So let me show something that you could, another idea for that one. You could use customer attributes. So if you wanted to store something and if you had some selections, you can have customer sign up, additional customer sign up fields in BigCommerce that you could store that into. And then you could always hide that. You could always hide that from view on the sign up form or also on the account maintenance forms. So it's another place you can stuff data, and those can sync back and forth with Acumatica. So that's another trick to do that. And something that Josh was talking about is an outside app. And I will go ahead and pull this up. This is one of the Exploit configurators. And of course, if you need your test server for Acumatica and you want to have that local, go ahead and check out our website for those. A little shameless plug. Try and throw those in there whenever I can. But on this, we use an outside app to configure a lot of what we call transformations. So ability to have little messages here, ability to something that does not come out of the box in BigCommerce is to do quantity selectors. So we've added those, and we've customized all that in the outside app. And then as a tip for you guys, what we do is, let me go ahead and show the panel for a second here, and we'll go to an item. And sometimes I'm okay showing all of our inventory and stuff, and other times I've got to just show you guys because I'm showing you guys live data. So I gotta make you a little careful what I show off. Luckily, I'm CEO. I can't get in a lot of trouble, but we don't also want to show off too much stuff sometimes. Okay, so some interesting tips for people who are trying to store data for an item. And at first, one of the common fields that people use is warranty information. And so because of you're having to pass data back and forth between different programs, we will oftentimes 64-bit encode our data so that it translates properly between our different outside tools. That's why it kind of looks like gibberish right here. Is that it's just 64-bit or 64-bit encoded. So, but interesting enough, we ran into the unpublished maximum for warranty information. So it's I don't know the exact number, but it's right around 50,000 characters, and we hit 50,000 characters from our outside tool in here. So we had to end up abandoning that. And so what we did though is, if I go back to this details, if you see here, this looks like a normal description of the product, but if I look at the HTML for it, this field we tried to load a couple 100,000 characters, and we didn't hit a maximum for the description field. So we have the normal description, and then we have our X byte JSON array. So we put this into a div that's not displayed, and so that way we can hide that from view, but then pass it to the page to be used. So kind of a cool technique to add additional information that you may need on a page is hiding it in these type of fields and passing it to the site itself. So we use our third-party app to kind of keep this updated, and this is the power of all of our configurators, is that JSON array, and that does all of our transformations for us. So kind of a little tip for those trying to do some things is to hide stuff. We also found limitations, and I'll take a step back on the page. So on this page, we have the header right here, which we wanted this little blurb to be searchable, so we didn't want it just to be an image. We have different sections here for related documents, related articles, related videos, and so the BigCommerce does not allow you to extend categories at all. So you get what you get for categories. And so we used a similar technique on categories. And so we have multiple divs on the category description, and we position those on this page. So as Josh mentioned, we did work with a digital agency to help us with this concept, and they were able to basically take the header div and put it here. They're able to put multiple, these are two different sections, and drop it down here, and then we had product in the middle. So they're able to work to help us set that up. But for other people, as you're looking at this, a tip is use that description field, but use different classed or ID divs to control placement of things on the page. Let me hide Doug's comment here, so you guys may not be able to see that all. But yeah, so here's the header div, and here's some footer divs underneath of that. So kind of a nice way to control that layout just by using one field in BigCommerce. Let me show this up here.
I would say too, Ryan, if folks that are listening need introductions to digital agencies, there are a handful of BigCommerce agencies that we work with. These are agencies that BigCommerce introduced us to, and they have a lot of ERP experience. So we have that relationship. You can always feel free to reach out to us. We can make introductions there. You can also reach out to BigCommerce, and they can help you find an agency that's appropriate for the kind of project you're working on.
Yeah, they're helpful in kind of helping us find multiples that we interviewed until we picked the one that we went with. And then yeah, for us, we used cross between digital agencies, our own internal staff, along with a contracted developer to kind of create what we've got for our site. Christopher had a question about having issues with product pick list items not getting taxed appropriately, the custom engraving or other services. So we use product pick lists extensively. A lot of those with our items, and I have not seen any issues with the taxing, but we don't use custom engraving. Josh, any experience, or have you seen that at all?
Okay. So basically, it sounds like you're selling particular products. Those products have custom information associated with them. Like in BigCommerce, they would be options or modifiers, and those non-taxable service add-ons. Okay, so you're you're basically charging $5 for the engraving, but you don't want that $5 to be taxed. It's a non-tax service. Yeah, the add-on shows is 0 in the cart, but it's still the add-on shows is 0 in the cart. Okay, but it's still being taxed against. What's being taxed then?
It must add the full amount to the parent item or something, as opposed to individual.
I see. Okay, so you're buying a coffee cup for $20. Is it $5 to get it engraved, and then it's showing the coffee cup is then $25, and then taxing the whole thing?
Yeah, it looks like it.
Yeah, personally, I haven't seen that issue before. But Chris, if you or your VAR reaches out to us on, just create a case. Actually, you know what? I think I saw somebody else say that they were having the same problem too. If you like, reach out to us and submit a case, and then I'll connect with the support team, make sure that we're aware of it, and then number one, we can help you resolve this. But then also we can write an article, just like Sergey did on the community before. If we find a solution, then we can write up an article so that future customers will be able to go and figure out how to resolve this.
It sounds like a BigCommerce issue.
Yeah, it might be. Yeah, even if it's something, it could be that BigCommerce needs to be configured a certain way, or it could be a core issue with BigCommerce. Maybe BigCommerce, whenever they total up those issues, whenever they total up the products, they might just calculate everything together. Yeah, it's a BigCommerce issue.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like a BigCommerce issue with having to do with it being line item tax versus the total or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I would still, Chris, don't hesitate to reach out to us though, because we, even if it is a BigCommerce issue and my team can't do anything about it, I can, I mean, we have a really strong relationship with BigCommerce, so I can shoot an email over and see if one of their solution architects has anything to offer.
I didn't actually mean to show that, but I showed it anyway. I was trying to click on something else, but we'll work with that. Something I'm trying to find the other gotchas. Here's one that Kurt pointed out here. A couple other gotchas: customers with duplicate email addresses and customers without email addresses or postal codes. Yeah, the postal codes got us. I think we may have just defaulted that to our own or something if blank, just to allow it to sync. Yeah. As kind of a workaround. The duplicate email addresses, that's across the board. Every e-commerce platform I know uses email address as the primary key for customers. Right. And you can't have, that's just something you have to, that is a problem. The fix for it, and Josh will put some more pressure on you, that customer merge, that would help out with us immensely.
Yeah, I would say Ryan's right. So that is a topic that we talk about internally quite a bit. So it's not something that's being ignored. We know that there's a challenge there. In talking with our CTO, the solution for that challenge is there's a lot of work that needs to go into it. And before that work starts, my understanding is many of the module teams have to come together on a solution that will work for everyone and not have an impact across the entire platform. So to Ryan's point though, that ideas section of the community is something we take very seriously. So whenever I have meetings with my leadership, they're regularly asking me, have you been on the ideas lately? Have you, are you responding to people? Has anybody brought any great ideas? So your contributions to that, they don't go unnoticed.
And Kurt's showing something here. Bundle B2B is a workaround. And that sounds like that may be a workaround to the tax issue.
No, that's I would guess that Kurt's referencing the multiple customers. So are you familiar with Bundle B2B, Ryan?
I'm not.
Okay, so Bundle B2B is a app that's built for the BigCommerce platform. And one of the challenges with BigCommerce is that they don't have a customer hierarchy. So in the B2B world, your customer is going to be a company, and then within that company, you can have multiple buyers, you know, multiple people. But when you just naturally, with the integration between BigCommerce and Acumatica, if you're going to export customers from Acumatica over to BigCommerce, that one customer is going to be represented in BigCommerce, so that one company. But in reality, what you want is multiple buyers all represented, all representing that one company. Bundle B2B allows you to create that customer hierarchy inside the BigCommerce platform. So what they do is they use customer groups. The customer group, I mean, they have an application that extends the platform, but essentially the customer group becomes a representation of the company, and then multiple individual buyers have a relationship to that customer group, which gives them the relationship to the company. And then when any of those buyers' orders flow into Acumatica, the orders roll up to the particular company. So inside Acumatica, you can have a company with multiple contacts. This is going to give those contacts an account inside of BigCommerce so they can make purchases.
Okay, nice. Someone's mentioning pick lists. Something that we found with pick lists in BigCommerce is if you're using actual real products in that, it will add them all as single items. And then if you, we had some issues where it would start to kind of combine items. So if you added in another pick list with similar SKUs, you would then have quantity 2 of that item. So something is another one of those things. And then our workaround for that is that we, behind the scenes, like, so let me show our configuration in case anyone, unless it's our competitors listening to this broadcast, then definitely do not do this. But we take this and we just make it a single item. And then we put the entire configuration as a configurable attribute on that one item, and so that way we're able to keep this entire configuration together. And then that gets passed to Acumatica, and then we just explode that as a kit onto the order in Acumatica. It's pretty straightforward customization to explode that. So that was kind of our workaround to be able to kind of keep all this stuff together when we do these pick lists. Let me go ahead and Luke, any other experiences? We had a couple minutes here. I wanted to have you add anything, because you're kind of in the thick of things in the very beginning. It's been a year and a half for me.
Well, it actually hasn't been too terribly long, but we have been looking at this for several months. So I feel like actually a lot of the initial things that we kind of brushed up against were already worked on some solutions. I do kind of resonate with the comment made about the bundle B2B problem with, you know, having multiple customers that have a relationship with a parent entity. I mean, that's kind of what you're going to get into probably if you're working more from like our business, where we have an established customer base with B2B business, and we're moving towards a B2C, you know, where actual individuals from within that organization have logins and things like that. That is something that we discussed, but given that our business in the B2C world is so young, we kind of worked around that and just said, you know, for now we're going to have, you know, a customer request that a login be created, and we'll handle that as part of our accounting process. One of the other kind of ideas we had to kind of solve that was to use the parent-child relationships in Acumatica to build that hierarchy. But then you would have, instead of contacts within a business entity, you would have multiple entities that kind of roll up in an accounting format where you could look at their total sales, something of that nature. Other gotchas or issues that we really ran up against. I mean, this is going to sound like too much of, you know, I'm trying to make make a good name for myself or something, but really the consensus between the entire team, the marketing team, myself, and my IT team, was that for the most part, the stuff, at least in the capacity that we're using it so far, which is limited, kind of just works the way you would expect. I mean, yeah, there are these little nuanced things where you have to worry about, email addresses, but we kind of expected that. And when we ran into them, it made sense. It's like, yeah, the email address is going to be the primary key for the customer when they log in. I mean, that's just logical, but that's the way it's going to work by default. And a lot of areas where you kind of just have to use your own business knowledge of how things work in your particular experience with the customer as to how you're going to build some sort of rigidity into your process so that things don't go totally off the rails. You kind of want to have a little bit of vision and forethought about what happens with returns and things like that. But I mean, all these things are coming, and but in the meantime, we're able to work around them pretty simply, and I think it's been so far a very positive experience.
That's great to hear.
Hey, Josh, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way they can do that? Is that through cases or?
Yeah, so you can definitely get in touch with me through cases. If you submit a case and just mention my name, the support team will reach out to me. But when I do events like this, usually what people do that works really well is if you find me on LinkedIn and we connect there, that's the best way to start off a conversation. I'm sure we're going to post this on YouTube later on, so I'm a little hesitant to share out my email address this way, but any way you can get in touch with me, either LinkedIn, create a case and mention my name, or all the VARs have my contact information too. So, but yeah, don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions. I'm always happy to help anybody that needs it.
So just look up Josh Fischer on LinkedIn, and start chatting with him that way. Let's see, any other questions? The Avalara came up with a couple questions that sound like a lot around pick lists. So anyone with those questions, hit up Josh on LinkedIn, or create those cases, and you'll be able to kind of start to address those things. You're also welcome, Luke, if anyone wants to kind of hear about your experiences, and I know a lot of times as you're getting into it, it's good to kind of know a community of people into the same thing. So if anyone want to chat with you, is LinkedIn the best way as well?
LinkedIn, you can find me, or just hit me up on my email. It's just luke@cherrylake.com. I'm glad to share experiences or my knowledge, albeit a little bit limited at this point. Anything I can do to help. I love what you're doing, Ryan. I think it's great. You put these little sessions together. I learn a lot every time I talk with you, so I appreciate it and want to give back any way that I can.
All right. And me, if you need me, it's ryan.brown@xbyte.com. That's XBYTE. You can also just check out xbyte.com for servers, of course, another shameless plug. And I've talked about this tool a couple times. I forget now if we talked about it live. Did we talk about the Skyvia tool live on the air today?
No.
Okay. That was the last thing I'd lined up. I wanted to show you guys. So this is a tool, and it took a lot of, and I'll post this out here. And so I was browsing a lot of the forums for BigCommerce, trying to find a way to kind of directly update the database. We had some challenges in the beginning where we may wanted to push a bunch of stuff to some products, and we're trying to use the import from BigCommerce, but then the category field was tripping us up, and we ended up destroying a bunch of our category relationships. So it just got messy with trying to do the import tools that BigCommerce gave us. So we found this tool. I don't know if it's Skyvia or Skyvia, but it allows you to connect directly to basically the database of BigCommerce. And so we've been able to update inventory, update categories. So one of the fields that I don't know if that's been changed recently, but in the early days, you could not update the visibility field of categories. And we had some categories we just didn't want to show for various reasons. And so we're able to do that with this tool. I believe we have updated certain things with some of our just web pages that are out there that are more of just content pages. We've been able to update. So a great tool out there for doing different things. So another tip out there is this Skyvia tool, or Skyvia, however you want to pronounce it. So I'll kind of leave you guys with that. I don't believe we had any other questions. This was a really good conversation. Another that view I didn't like. So thank you very much, Josh and Luke, for joining us. Thank you, everyone in the audience, for joining us today. If you do have any customers who are considering BigCommerce, I would pass this link to them. It's a kind of a great overview of what we've all gone through, and hopefully it helps them as they go throughout things, making a good decision. I don't want to speak for Luke, but I know we wouldn't change our minds. We really liked BigCommerce and everything they can offer. So would definitely recommend that. Luke, from our conversation, I'm guessing you'd say the same thing.
Yeah, I come from an ERP background, and it's what I've been doing my entire professional career. And I know anytime you try to connect things together, there's going to be issues, and they've been very minimal, which was impressive to me and everyone else who's worked with the platform so far. We expected there to be issues. We expected there to be little imperfections, or maybe we'd like something to be a little better. But again, not trying to make a great name for myself with Acumatica or anything by any means, but it's really been a pretty straightforward process. Unabashedly, it's been an impressive with how simple and straightforward it really went.
And Josh, I take it you'd recommend Acumatica to everybody?
Yeah, Acumatica is great. Yeah. To be completely honest, though, I joined Acumatica for the technology. When I met, I had my eye on Acumatica for years. I was monitoring the work that they were doing in the commerce space, and in my future life, or my past life, I saw Acumatica as a competitor, and then I realized, wow, they're really gonna take off. They're doing a lot of things right. And then when I learned more about the technology, I saw how open the framework was. I started to understand the API. I mean, there were aspects of the API that were, they helped me make the decision, but the technology is outstanding. And then getting involved with the team, I mean, everybody at the company puts customers first. I mean, everyone's concern is the success of the customers. And that's, for me personally, that's exactly the kind of environment that I wanted to be in. And yeah, we're going to continue to grow, and I'm excited about what the future holds.
Do you have any summit sessions that you want to mention?
Yeah, so for those of you that can make it to the summit this year, the summit will be July 19th through the 23rd. It's going to be all week. The first 2 days are going to be sessions, and then there's going to be training later in the week. There's actually going to be a whole track of commerce related sessions. So there's going to be 7 sessions this year that are just focused on commerce, retail commerce. And that'll cover everything from marketplaces, BigCommerce, Shopify, and POS. So there's going to be a lot of retail commerce this year at the event. So hopefully we'll see you guys there. Nice.
Thank you very much for joining us. For those who are weekly or every 2-week viewers of our augforums.com live, we had to do a little bit of rescheduling to make this one happen, but we are going back to our normal cadence, so we'll actually be live again next week. And so next week we're going to kind of talk about a hot topic at Acumatica, which is kind of the differences between this low-code, no-code customizations and then your more traditional .NET customizations. So it should be a good one to kind of, as we kind of push the boundaries of this low-code, no-code to see what you can do. So we have Yuri, the developer MVP, who'll be joining us next week. So it should be an amazing session. So please join us next week, guys. Thank you guys very much. We look forward to seeing everybody. And let me see if I can do this outro properly. Again, I don't have my producer, Tim, with me, so let's see if this works. Thank you guys very much. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us, Ryan.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.